Hey Jay, welcome
Hey,
back. Sorry about that
all right, we're
snafu.
back.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, let me tell everybody.
Appreciate
Yeah,
coordinating that.
yeah, exactly. This way we could got one point of contact. Is the
I'll
link
jump in the
on?
other one real fast and tell folks to come over here if they're in the wrong
Yeah,
place.
nice.
Thanks.
Whoever that is, thank you. Because the link on the web on the DSW website is also the old one.
Totally. We'll get
Okay,
that. It
you're
should
gonna
change
do your thing.
now. Sorry
I'll
for the
just sit back
confusion.
here, drink my water. Tell me if you need me.
Yeah.
Is Nick still here?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry about this. We had some kind of
No worries. What's your
scrambling
phone
where
number? Just
good
just in
idea.
case. Yeah.
Six
Hold on, let me
one
text you.
seven. Yeah.
617
910
910
6260.
6260. As soon as like it cut out, and like as soon
Hmm.
as it happened, I was like, oh, I should have.
Yeah. Find another means of contact. I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if you all were sitting in here ready to go and I had just been kicked out or if the whole thing ended, but
Right,
it looks
right. And then there's that like moment of panic and you can't think straight, and then
Hey
um
Jay, I got another call coming in. Let
yeah,
me
yeah.
answer
Do your
it
thing.
and see what's going on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry about that.
Mhm. Oh, so do you have Andrew's email address?
I don't know that it went out to him.
Right.
I
Okay, cool.
don't. Let me.
I got it.
Okay, do you mind sending the invite
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
him?
Yeah, no problem. That's what I
All
was
right.
trying to say.
Yeah.
Um, I can even just go to my, I've got like a group one.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Get Doug in here at least. Adam and Andrew. That's the one person I really need to do. Okay. Um,
Okay, Jay, just because we're starting to get a few minutes past, I may go ahead and just buy us some time by clicking on the video stream that has the sponsor information and start our webinar. And then once we come back from that video or while the video is playing, I can be looking for the other folks. Uh-oh, you're on mute. I missed it.
Thanks. I try to keep myself on mute just because you never know.
Sure.
And clearly I forgot to take myself off mute. Yeah, worst case, it's just me talking. That's okay too. I can,
Okay. So,
yeah.
well, I'll be very impressed if you can entertain folks for the next hour. But regardless, good luck. And Yeah, and we
Ah,
can chat through text or through the side panel with the chat
okay.
functionality as this gets underway.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
We're here to have a good time. So whatever,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to check our Slack channel, see if there's any.
Okay.
No. Okay.
Hello, I'm Eric Matisik, co-chair of Denver Startup Week. Last year, we were able to bring the global audience together for Denver Startup Week, and this year, we're excited to welcome that global audience back as we celebrate and showcase the best of entrepreneurship that the Denver ecosystem in Colorado has to offer, in Denver and beyond. There are lots to explore this week, but most importantly, we're excited that you're joining us. We have nearly 50 sponsor companies who contribute to make Denver Startup Week possible. Let's show our love for these companies today and all week long. Thanks to our headquarters and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life, Capital One Cafe, the Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork, and our track sponsors who've made all the great content you're hearing today possible, which includes our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, our growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, design track sponsor, Battery 621 and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and the spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing this excitement to the entire week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing Company, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, Gusto, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage Path, Red Bull Basement, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and the VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our sponsors and member sponsors who are listed on the screen, and thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. Now, let's get to it.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Denver Startup Week. I am Michael Ostro, and I'm the Maker Track Chair, as well as a member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you so much for joining Denver Startup Week for our 10th anniversary. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a place where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, and that is regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you goes out to our sponsors for their support and helping us make Denver Startup Week free for everyone and accessible to all. And I also want to thank Agora.io. They are the MakerTrack sponsor, so thank you, Agora, for making this happen. And thank you for joining us. Enjoy Denver Startup Week and make the most out of it.
Huh.
Are we on? Jay,
I think
can you hear me?
we're here. I can hear you, but I don't. Doesn't look like we got everybody else. I don't know. Oh, cool.
Oh, says we're good to go.
All right.
All right.
So let's go.
Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. Happy to be a part of this. Happy to be a part of Denver Startup Week. Always try to be involved in some capacity, and super excited about what we're going to cover today. And to be honest with you, this is one that I don't know a ton about, but certainly I'm passionate about. Before we jump into sort of the headlines here, I want to do quick introductions to the folks that are joining us on our panel today. My friend here, Jay Schreiber, who I've known for quite some time, who's been consulting and representing company here in town, Hulo Jewelers. Hello, Jay.
Hi. Happy to be
Thank
here.
you.
Thanks for the intro.
And
Yeah.
we've got Adam. Adam, are you on with us?
I don't see him here yet. I got him on text trying to get him all set
Okay,
up here.
okay.
Yeah.
Adam will be here. If not, Jay said that he can use different voices and speak for different people today. Is Andrew with us?
I am
'Cause
here.
you might-
Andrew's here.
Andrew, thanks for joining us today. I promise you I'll give you an opportunity to talk about what you do and why you're with us, but just want everybody to see your face. So yeah, this is something close to my heart and probably close to most people as we sit around and talk today as a group. I don't know. I can't see anybody. But I'm going to assume there's thousands of you out there watching this.
It's packed.
So
We hit the
packed,
300.
packed. So
Yeah.
if everyone can take it down a little bit, it's kind of hard for me to hear. I'm kidding. So when we sit back today, I'm actually sitting outside right now of the giant flagship REI in front of the Starbucks, which is a great spot. And always when you start walking around here, you can't help to get to thinking about something that's so near and dear our hearts here in Colorado, the outdoors and kind of keeping this country, keeping the world beautiful. But unfortunately, I mean, there are concerns out there. The concerns about greenhouse gases, plastic situation is very concerning in terms of what's going on in the ocean. Where are we going with energy? Where's the hope in some of this? As unfortunately, we've seen some of the worst air quality historically here right in our backyard. It's always nice to see us in these great lists, Denver, in terms of being a top tech city, and job opportunities and things of that nature. But certainly, we've seen some things recently that aren't too exciting around air quality and things of that nature. So today we're going to dive into what's going on in that space and what are the three gentlemen that are with me today. They're going to talk about the areas that they work in and how they're addressing and looking at the future as it pertains to industries that you might not even think about, and what they're able to do in terms of the impact on the earth, if you will, and whether that's today or tomorrow. So I just really want to open it up and have kind of an open discussion about these topics. You saw two of the gentlemen's faces, but let's get into a little bit more of their background and take maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes tops, and talk about, at least from kind of a 100,000-foot view, what your role is, what your capacity is, and how you're looking at what we're talking about here, what you're doing in particular in your industry, if you will, to address these things. So let's, Andrew, I'll hand the mic to you, per se, and maybe you can kind of touch a little bit on your background. And I think kind of interesting in terms of where you started and where you are today, from an energy standpoint. So maybe you can touch a little bit on that first and then talk about what you're involved in now.
Sure. Yeah, no, would love to. Thanks for passing it over, Doug. My name is Andrew Likens. I work for Crusoe Energy Systems. I'm the Vice President of Business Development here. My background is in the energy space. I started on the upstream oil and gas side as a landman, basically working throughout North America to acquire oil and gas interests to ultimately drill oil and gas wells. And kind of spent the first decade of my career kind of working for exploration and production companies. And during my time in kind of working in that capacity for public companies and private equity-backed companies, it became clear that that flaring of natural gas was a huge issue. And for those of you who don't really know what flaring is, it's basically the kind of combustion of natural gas that's produced from an oil well that doesn't have adequate pipeline capacity. So it sounds like a big waste, and it is, but the challenge of flaring is really an infrastructure problem. And every time you drill an oil and gas well, you really need a natural gas pipeline to bring that natural gas from the produced well to market, usually to a utility to combust in a combined cycle power plant and provide your homes with electricity. But at times an oil and gas well might produce more than can fit in a pipeline, or there's other challenges that cause people the lack of ability to run a pipeline to that location. And so in that instance, it's much better to flare this natural gas than just release methane into the environment. That's called venting. And so this is sort of an occurrence in the oil field that is sort of an unfortunate part of kind of daily operations in oil and gas when there is not adequate capacity in that pipeline. And so having worked in that space for a long time, you kind of recognize it as a black eye to the industry, but something that really could use a solution. And the founders of Crusoe approached me really early on. One is a computer scientist and one is an upstream oil and gas guy. And they said, hey, I think we can take down some of this gas that's being flared and use it to generate electricity. And that's not a new concept either. People have been doing that for a while. But the challenge is, what do you do with that electricity, and how can you justify expending all of that capital to put a generator out there? Well, their idea was to generate electricity and then utilize the electricity produced in data centers that are right on the well site. So you could bring this electricity demand right to the areas of stranded or excess energy. And so that's exactly what Crusoe does. We deploy mobile modular data centers, and we deploy them to areas of stranded or excess energy. And the majority of our business is based around digital flare mitigation, which is basically that concept in the oil and gas sense that mitigates flaring. And so I ended up joining the company. I was the third employee. We've taken several rounds of funding. From Bain Capital Ventures and Founders Fund and Valor Equity Partners led our $128 million Series B in February, and we're up to about 90 folks. And so we have over 60 megawatts of flare mitigation power generation to data center activities. And the majority of our data center activities are mining for Bitcoin, but we also have developed a high performance compute cloud to take on any type of energy intensive computation with GPUs. And so my role at Crusoe has been kind of identifying these stranded power sources and negotiating mutually beneficial agreements to limit the emissions of oil and gas companies and provide a low cost of power and utilizing an underutilized power source for the cloud compute infrastructure. Hey, Doug, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, I just said something so powerful that I can't put it out.
Can't recreate it.
I just
Lightning
can't.
doesn't strike twice.
Exactly, but I wrote it down and I'll shoot it out later. No, you know what I like about this, Andrew, is I feel like today there's such like opposition to each camp, so to speak. Like I'm with this or I'm with that, and it eliminates the ability for people to really sit down and say, hey, how can we make real change together? And we're talking about an industry within energy, the oil and gas space, specifically natural gas, and I know quite a bit about natural gas and how it's considerably cleaner than coal, than oil. Yet there's concerns there as well, as you've mentioned. So I think, the idea, rather than saying, hey, we don't want this and we don't want that, we only want, our energy coming from X, Y, Z, looking at something that is a better option than what else we're utilizing today, in terms of air quality and things of that nature, and having a manner to, to really impact that as we sit here now.
No, I think that's right, Doug. I think it's challenging because Crusoe's perspective in all this is that we believe in the energy transition, full stop. But while we certainly believe in the energy transition, we think a critical component of the energy transition over the next decade to several decades is hydrocarbons are still going to be relevant and important in maintaining a stable grid. And we certainly want to build more renewables, but if we need hydrocarbons for the next few decades, how do we produce them as responsibly as possible? And so it's not as binary as we need to be full renewables or we only want to use natural gas and oil. It's a useful tool as we transition to a decarbonized energy system. So that's sort of how we view the world.
Back on mute there.
Okay, I'm back.
There you go.
But this time I didn't actually say anything, so it worked out.
Okay.
So Jay, I'm gonna kick it over to you. Same thing.
Yeah.
You can kind of talk about your involvement in this space, for lack of a better term, right now.
Yeah. So definitely involved in this space. I'm gonna go back to Chicago. So right now we're in Denver. Before this was Seattle. Before that was Chicago. So I was working in the Sears Tower, Willis Tower. If you're actually in Chicago these days, you can get in big trouble with lawsuits. But I was working in plastic recycler, and then moved over to plastic markets to understand, okay, how is it possible that you take in trash, do some stuff to it, sell a product, and go out of business? And a lot of these folks running plastic recyclers like Adam do go out of business. So that was kind of, we've got a tiny little market inside of a smaller market, the virgin plastics, which is a derivative of what Andrew's working on, of the natural gas kind of crude oil big market. So I got to see supply chains and how they interact, and understand markets a bit. And I was doing my MBA out there and said, where's the blue ocean in trash? Which, is a question that everybody here at DSW is asking, like, what's the blue ocean in trash? And so organics is really an interesting space. We waste about 30 to 40% of our food, kind of depending on how you do the math. And so I said, that's cool. How do I do that? Ended up going to Seattle to work for a compost in a can, above ground natural gas producer. So we did a small scale, give us a parking spot, about $100,000, and we can take 1,000 pounds of food waste a week and turn that into above ground natural gas. So Andrew was talking a minute ago about, what's the transition fuels as we're moving away from fossil and towards renewables. We were participating in that and kind of giving another option. I really liked what you were saying, Andrew, about, it's not one, it's many. And so everybody does their thing. So that's what I was doing in Seattle, and then moved to Denver, did a couple things, and a friend of mine I had this great business idea. Turns out there's gold in your cell phone, your computer. There's a little bit of gold. What if we capture, and people are capturing all that gold? What if we made some jewelry out of it and sold it? Like, could we get consumer demand around earrings, around jewelry? It's like, great, we'll make 10 pairs of this gold earrings. How are we gonna do this? And so I called up a friend of mine, Avi Bulow, who owns this Bulow Jewelers. We actually sat down for drinks. He's a big bourbon guy, so he poured some drinks, and I told him my idea, and he's like, yeah, there's a lot you don't know about jewelry. And I was like, that's true. So about a year ago now, come work for me, learn about the industry. Let's see if this thing has legs, and if we could actually create some jewelry people would want, and all that. And while I'm there, I'm noticing there's this phenomenal thing happening in diamonds. So until now, we've been digging holes. 100 years ago, De Beers comes up with diamond for everybody. Used to be only royalty, and now everybody can get a diamond, and they kind of democratize diamonds 100 years ago. And I can wax poetic. It's part of the fun of being at a jewelry store is you get to be there, the happiest moments of people's lives and get all romantic, and it's perfect for me. But so there's crazy disruption based on technology in the diamond industry right now. So you've got diamonds, De Beers, got a couple others now. The industry, that side of the industry is kind of expanded, and then lab diamonds, which is started in 1950s by GE, trying to do industrials to just vertically integrate and cover the cost. And fast forward a few years, about 10 years ago, they moved from little tiny low quality stones to the technology got there. We could do gemstone quality. So you could come in and have the exact same gemstone, the exact same diamond, and I can't tell the difference. You can't tell it. Like no one can tell the difference. You need a $10,000 piece of machinery to tell the difference in a lab and a mined diamond, which is pretty incredible. So now we don't have to dig a hole in the ground anymore. We can you can basically place an order and say, hey, I want this diamond, and we can get into it some more. But that's what's going on right now in diamonds. And my thesis, my question was, what's the most sustainable possible jewelry, right? So Andrew says, hey, give me the most sustainable possible, right? I'm really into this, or Doug, and that was my question coming in, and now I've got some cool answers. Lab diamonds is a big part of that. So
that's fascinating. I mean, you don't, you typically don't think of jewelry, gold, in terms of how do we change the world, right? But at the same time, I don't know if maybe you could speak to this a little bit, Jay. One of the interesting things, I've done a lot of reading on the current car situation and how we're sitting here at this very interesting time where used cars are for the first time worth something. Generally, the saying has always been
it's crazy demand. Super cool.
The saying was always, as soon as you drive the new car off the lot, it's worth less immediately, dropped by X percentage. But as I looked into that, I thought it was an obvious answer as to why there's such a supply issue as it pertains to going through COVID and factories being shut down for a certain period of time. But the more I looked into it, the more I found out that the issue was more about the specific. I'm losing
computer chips.
Yeah, the chips that are going into these cars.
Yeah.
And that this is coming from the rare earth type stuff.
Yeah.
Curious if you could, that's I think something that the average person doesn't necessarily think about.
Right.
That these aren't the cars that maybe I grew up with carburetors and. This is, right. I mean, I think the average person doesn't know what a carburetor is, but but in terms of everything's really run by a computer.
Right.
And in order for that computer to run, I don't know if you're comfortable kind of diving into this a little bit.
Yeah.
But what is needed for that to happen? I mean, is that not part of some level of mining and what does that look like?
I love how I tried to leave so many breadcrumbs for you to pick up on, and like you picked one that's hard to answer. So it's funny. I teach a course up at Regis on supply chain, and I assigned a YouTube video and basically answering this question about like what's going on with the cars, like why did they all shut down? And it's JIT and Toyota, and it's really interesting. You kind of like really interesting business stuff on the car shortages. Rare earths, it's a fascinating question. One more thing before I get to actually answer your question. In diamonds, the big opportunity, I was talking about industrials. We got gemstone quality, so you can go and buy one and give it as part of a ring or wear it. It's a wearable. There's one more step in diamonds that we're not there yet, which would meet that demand of semiconductor chips. We could put diamonds inside of chips. It's like that's the next big thing to look for. Yeah. So crazy, like this issue that we're seeing with COVID of supply chain issues and boats not coming back and forth and all that. It could be that now we're going to have diamonds being grown domestically, and maybe we could do chip production here, or maybe it's offshore. Anyways, diamonds, look for that kind of in the future as processors. So that's kind of two things. The rare earths is a huge question. There's some really interesting folks working on battery recycling. I've seen a lot of like, oh, we can't do electric cars because we don't know how to recycle the batteries. Similar to what Andrew was saying before about, there's more than one option. But, you got to weigh your things. It's all about trade-offs. So do you want to continue to produce fossil fuel, release fossil fuels and all that? And then is that the problem you want to solve? Or, we've got a stockpile now of old batteries, we'll figure out what to do with it. Like that's what we do with nuclear energy. We just stockpile the waste. We'll figure that out later. It's not the existential threat. So yeah, rare earths, there's a lot on there. My answer isn't as quick and direct as I wanted it to be. But there is already discussion.
I was gonna say that's because I threw you for a loop there.
Well, there is already discussion. That's what I was trying. I do have an answer though, because we're gonna hang up.
Yes.
I'm like, I knew this one. There is already discussion about demand curves and how are we gonna have enough of these rare earth metals? Like they're rare, and not dig them up and all that. So yeah, absolutely, it's a thing.
Did Adam join? I want to make sure.
Oh no, so he got tied up with something.
Okay.
So he's gonna try to make it if he can, but I had that update from him.
No, good stuff. Thank you, Jay. Andrew, when you listen to what Jay is touching on, love to hear feedback, thoughts. Sometimes I can't help to wonder, as I mentioned early on about the idea of us being able to kind of sit down, different sides, different views, and come up with real solutions. Does any of what Jay is talking about speak to you?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly in the business of silicon wafers and supply chain issues and chip shortages that we're starting to navigate through as well, or have been navigating through over the last 12 months. And I think we're trying to make our supply chain more robust, not completely dependent on manufacturers in Southeast Asia to the extent we can get outside of TSMC. Which is a challenge since they're kind of the only ones capable of the newest generation 6-nanometer chips. But I think there's a lot to unpack, and it does make me think of people do complain about the impact of oil and gas development, and it's right in their backyard, and I certainly understand the arguments against it. I'd say that as I've learned more about lithium mining and the other kind of rare earth metals that go into batteries, it's also pretty damaging to the earth. And I do think it's a complementary approach that brings us to the place where we need to be from an emissions standpoint. Because if we try to go 100% reliable on renewables or 100% to electric cars, there's going to be a challenging period where we have to really understand the impact of trying to mine for that much lithium, be it domestically or internationally. It all has kind of an impact. So just trying to kind of think through what the best approach is and how it's probably some of everything in moderation.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Hey, Jay, talking about your sort of full background in the recycling space and some of those areas, I'll throw you for another loop here, but I know you'll know the answers on this one. Not to say that you didn't have a good answer before, but there's a lot of talk today and a lot of different opinions based on what one may read. I a fascinating piece in the Atlantic a few years ago on this. The idea of recycling certain types of plastics and things of that nature, that they're not actually necessarily, they're just being like dumped somewhere else and moved somewhere else. And I guess kind of a two-part question, and certainly Andrew can chime in on this one too. One is what is sort of the truth about that, and two is, I've seen some cool stuff like Adidas making shoes out of recycled plastics and things of that
The
nature.
ocean plastic shoes.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is super cool.
Yeah.
But as a consumer,
Yeah.
besides running around with a sign in my hand protesting something, what can I mean, I got a job, I just can't do it. But what can one do to say, hey, I stand for this, or I support that, or I I want to invest in something that's going to ultimately benefit. Thoughts around those two things.
Yeah, those are two. Like, I'm going to be talking for a while here, so I think truth or recycling. If Adam were here, I'd let him be in the hot seat. You can actually go to Adam's, or not right now. They're COVID and they've been growing. But so Adam's not here. I'll just speak for him for a second. So he runs direct, to answer a question. He runs Direct Polymers, which and I used to work for a plastic recycler in Chicago. So very similar models. When you put something in the bin, so you put we'll use number one plastic. Number one and number two are the highest recycling rates of plastics. You put it in the bin. Truck drives by. It's garbage day or trash day or whatever. There's a lot of folks in my world who would yell at me for calling it garbage day, but can comes, goes into the car, tip, puts it in a big truck drives it off. That truck, by the way, just to add some complexity here, is getting about 2 miles per gallon. So you think about what's the carbon emission cost of being able to recycle that plastic bottle. That should factor into the math. So we got that. Now we go to a facility. First step is called a MRF, material recovery facility. They gotta now we smushed everything together into that truck. They gotta break it apart and sort it out into different components, into all the different commodities, and then they bail that up and then they ship that off to somewhere else. Luckily, so now the more you take, another one of those questions. How much stuff should we put in the recycling bin? Should we put more or less? Well, the value, as you increase the volume, the value of each item may go down because they conflict. Like glass doesn't really go with paper. It degrades it and lowers its value. So there's a lot of complex questions in recycling.
I mean, my son told me the other day that the pizza box doesn't go in recycling.
He's 100% right. It should go in compost. Yeah, at least the top of it. So here are those and then from my standpoint, how do you possibly communicate with customers or with consumers these questions? But I want to answer aluminum is aluminum. So there is a hierarchy. It's a we have Ballcorp here in the city, and that aluminum can is the same aluminum, and I think I have my numbers right. It's 95% more efficient. I always forget how to phrase that, but if you look at virgin versus this is virgin versus recycled, it's 95%. Like, it's a huge margin between what it takes to make an old can into a new can versus a new can. So there definitely is something. There's billions of dollars being made on this stuff. It's really there. So recycling is real, I would say. There's a lot of complexity that is difficult to tell the consumer, and that's one of the challenges of the industry, and that's part of why I moved over to B2C. All these folks sit around, in the waste industry, say we got to get to end markets, we got to turn our waste into a product, but they don't really understand how products are made. And so that is where I see a huge opportunity to make recycling more real. And that will bring me to answer your second question of what can you do as a consumer. So I actually rode by where you're sitting right now twice today. If I'm commuting, I'm on my bike, kind of number one. You got your commute, as long as we're doing fossil fuel transportation. I'm curious to hear how Andrew's going to respond to this one. You know, then plastics is secondary. It's a derivative. There's nothing really to talk about as long as we're doing fossil fuel as our main fuel source. So
Let's stop you there, Jay. I'd love to hear Andrew's response to that statement. Plus Jay may just finish off the session here. I want to make sure we.
Well, I can keep going. So pause anytime. That's great.
No, I think what Jay is saying is spot on. I think the challenge will be finding a fuel source as effective as fossil fuels to power transportation. I think his commentary is very accurate, and I think a lot of you out there will be like, well, we can move to electric cars, and I think that's a good comment. But at the end of the day, you also need to power the grid, and people forget that in order to power the grid, you need a stable source. You need a base load power source, and wind and solar are intermittent sources of power. And so, obviously, most utilities have moved away from coal, and some, in my opinion, unfortunately, are moving away from nuclear as well, a carbon-free base load power source. But natural gas is a pretty significant portion of the utility energy mix, which goes to power your electric cars and bikes. So I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I used to work with this gentleman who would go around the country and speak about energy, and it was interesting. It was a guy that grew up in a kind of rural town, and his father grew up in the grocery business, running grocery stores, ultimately managing large chains of them. And he was saying he used to always kind of launch with the same sort of overview, and it was this idea that sort of big city people, if you will, talk about these things, but they don't really understand. Like if I plug in my car, or I plug in whatever it is, a refrigerator, there's not understanding like where's the energy coming in to the wall, or if I'm getting milk, where did the milk actually come from? I mean, yes, if you ask the person, they could tell you from a cow, but where's the cow, and what did that process look like? So it's interesting because it's kind of like the organic food market that's exploded recently, and then I've read some interesting pieces that if everyone started eating organic, that wouldn't work either. So it's I feel like there's the solution has to be, and tell me, I'd love to hear both of your opinions on the statement when we get into these areas, that maybe not all of the above, but certainly it can't be it's this or it's that. There has to be whether, like you said, Andrew, this transition period. But I feel like even when you get past that transition period, unless there's some sort of true storage of wind or sun, that there still has to be some other way that this energy sort of source has to come from.
We have batteries. It's kind of I was waiting for Andrew to say that. It's not so I'm gonna say battery and then let you take over first.
That was a critical component that I missed there. So,
and then you can tell me on the recycling of the battery. Fair enough.
I think utility scale batteries there's so many smart people working on this, and it's exciting to see. At this point, the cost of those batteries is still prohibitive. But there's some really, really cool energy storage techniques. I don't know if you guys have seen some of these companies, a company called Energy Vault. They basically are using, when the wind is blowing, they're lifting a massive piece of cement up into the air, and then that's storing the energy. And so then if you need power later when the wind's not blowing, they drop the battery, and that's regenerating that electricity and putting it out into the grid. So I think that is the solution. I think utility scale battery technology, as it becomes more commercial and economic, and then maybe revisiting the nuclear conversation to have a carbon-free baseload power source.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Any, go
Jay,
ahead,
did I
sorry.
miss anything?
Yeah, no, that was great. I'm stuck on Energy Vault. I've never heard of them. That's fantastic. It's why I love, meeting of minds. There's stuff that you know that I don't know, and vice versa. It essentially is hydro, but with air. So there's a big discussion about hydro, and anybody who's interested, like Patagonia propaganda films are fantastic. And also to open up, like you were saying, Doug, of what does it actually take to do the thing? And that's kind of where I started from, of where does this thing go? Like I put this in the bin, and then what happens next? And so I've been
Right.
kind of on this journey of how do we actually do this stuff? And we get to some of the interesting ideas that I'm tossing around at the moment, and models I've seen out there that I want to bring here. But hydro was like the answer. And then if you ask anybody who's into salmon, they're like, hydro is the worst thing in the world. So like, which one is it?
Right,
Yes,
right.
it's both, right? Like it is a renewable. And so that arrow is kind of the new hydro. So now you've got stored energy in, like, with gravity, instead of water coming down, now it's, cement block. So that's a super cool technology I got to look into.
Yeah, no, that is fascinating. Yeah, it's funny. I was reading a piece recently about the history of electric cars.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating that you go back to like the early 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the direction of the automobiles. And yeah, I won't mention any names, but I think it starts with an F and ends with a D. Came out with a car, and I think, to be fair, at the same time, this is when the highways were being built, and the idea, of interstate highways and being able to, drive long distances, without having to recharge. But it's interesting. It's kind of like there's a certain way where I feel like we're moving into the future, right? But we also are going back to the past, and maybe where we should have kept going in a certain direction. And obviously I do believe that no one back then, for the most part, knew some of the ultimate damage some of these other things might do. You're not thinking about that back then. Well, I'd like to think that, at least. I don't want to get into if I'm wrong with that.
Right.
Sure.
It's interesting, actually, because you'll see something, it'll be a piece, and it's like, oh, so-and-so said this, so-and-so predicted it. And you're like, yeah, that's easy to say now, because you have hindsight. But I wanted to answer a previous question, if I can.
Yeah.
So you were asking, what can consumers do? And I have something that I've come up with. I haven't seen anyone else who's smarter or well-versed say it first, that I can blame them. But you think like, what's the one thing I can do? Great, carbon, future, blah, blah. As a consumer, what kind of power do I have? And so,
right.
People talk about, like, right now, plastics is a huge deal, and plastic in the ocean is a huge deal. Like, it's a really big problem. Most of it's not coming from us. I would say the vast majority of the ocean plastic isn't ours. We do have some litter on the streets, and I can geek out on litter also. And that's going to end up in a waterway and down the stream, but it's not us, right? So provided that you're not doing that, right? You're actually putting a plastic container into a waste management, Western style, American containment, doesn't get lost along the way, actually ends up in a landfill. I don't know, is that bad? Considering all the different things, it's a petrochemical. We dug it out, right? Andrew will tell you more about that. And then we used it, and then we put it right back in the ground. We kind of put it back where it belongs. Not exactly the same spot, but I'm okay with plastic going back to landfills. What I'm not okay with is food waste going back to landfills. So that food, if it's not in a compost pile, will degrade. Now you got methane. We're capturing some methane. We're doing some, flaring it off, but we're not there yet. Of curacao, am I saying that right?
Crusoe.
Was that Crusoe? Thank you. I keep messing up. Crusoe.
Because Jay's lived in Seattle and Chicago. You just can't get, it's a speaking.
My accent's all messed up. But so until we get an electrical generation at every landfill site, and we're taking that methane, and we're not just flaring it off or whatever, food waste in landfills is actually a big deal. I think in terms of emissions, it would be third after China, the US, and then like food waste, if you aggregated how much that emission is. So again, that's not fair because it's US, national, global, whatever. But if you subscribe to that scheme, to use the British word, for compost at your curbside, right? So if you got Denver waste, you got your recycling bin, and you go get a compost bin, that's actually going to have like the single most, first thing to go do, compost.
Right.
So
yeah, no,
that's really interesting. Yeah, I didn't know any of that about food compost. I do know a little bit about further downstream of there. California has its low carbon fuel standard, and they're incentivizing people all over the country to capture this waste from landfills, waste gas from landfills, waste gas from dairy farms. And if you can capture that methane and put it in a pipeline, or even combust it to kind of fully combust that methane, because that is a much less harmful for the environment, they'll give you California will incentivize you monetarily. So it's really interesting that's become a focus of people related to kind of our energy and natural gas space. But I had no idea about the compost side.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating stuff. So I want to do this. We've got roughly 5 minutes left. We've touched on a lot of cool stuff. I think we covered a lot of territory. But I'll kind of give the two of you, call it 2.5 minutes each, to sort of put your message out there. I mean, going back to, quite frankly, the title of today's session, around technology saving the world, specifically as it pertains to literally the world, the earth, right? The earth that we stand on, and the sky we look at. I'm such a freaking poet. Sometimes I forget how good I am with that. I'm going to write that down. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna hand it to you first, Andrew, and then we'll let Jay finish it off there. But again, I mean, speak to the folks of Denver Startup Week that are listening, and what is your sort of final message, if you will, on this?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think, I mean, for anyone out there listening, it seems like your head's in the right place. Just being here, I think, Crusoe's mission is we only take on projects that are environmentally beneficial, and we have all these company values that we want to kind of find treasure in the trash and create value in the margin. And I think there's so much opportunity to be more efficient and to leverage the things that we have today to kind of lessen our environmental impact of the way we live today. And so I think this next stage of life, and where people are focused on their environmental impact, it is really just trying to find ways to be more efficient. And it feels good to work for a company that has these same goals to kind of find opportunities in the existing ecosystem to make our environmental impact better. And I think I'd encourage everyone out there to do the same. And I think Jay is doing what he can in his world. And I think it's an exciting time. It's a time of innovation and a lot of creativity as we try and figure out how to decarbonize.
Great stuff. And Jay, I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, I already used up my card there a little early, but no, I get to talk about diamonds. I was hoping to talk, wax poetic about technology disrupting this 100-year-old industry that gave us the ability to communicate in a new way. So before, if you wanted to tell your wife, hey, I love you, $10,000. That's how much I love you.
Yeah.
Like, you write her a check, like it didn't really, now you give her this shiny, sparkly, amazing piece of carbon that's just fantastic. And I think there's a really interesting story that we didn't get to at all, that anybody who wants to, I'm happy to talk about market dynamics and things. But I think Lab Diamonds introduces to the end customer, right? Kind of what can I do as a person? So I mentioned compost, but I think there's a strong argument for a lab diamond that doesn't grow, it doesn't dig a hole in the ground. There's some really interesting things of all these communities worldwide that are based on diamond mining. Like, how do we go help those communities, bring them good, quality jobs in STEM, and we could basically plant a diamond lab where there used to be a mine. It's like there's always
Right.
options, right? Like we can always come up with something better. I think when we're forward thinking and thinking about solution oriented and abundance as opposed to scarcity. I think a lot of times people see, oh, if I accept this carbon issue, then I also have to accept less. And I would
Right.
say that for me personally, the opposite. Like I do a lot of stuff to lower my carbon footprint, and like just me personally, I got 2 kids and I want to leave them a better world. I can't change the world, but I can change my piece in it. And every single one of those steps that I've done, like we have a Nissan Leaf, it's the best car. Like it just, the pickup is fantastic. I ride my bike and I was looking at everybody in traffic and I was like, this is great. So I think the more we adopt these kind of forward-thinking solutions, the better our lives are, and that it's not all or none, and it's not all at once. So it's little by little, step at a time. Like, cool, I signed up for compost. Now what? All right, I got a lab diamond. Now what? Now I ride to work once a week, or I telecommute the other another day. So kind of slowly easing in and asking people for help, I think is always a good strategy, and especially in this space, which is complex and challenging and heartbreaking. So I want to be,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I think those are some great points, Jay. I mean, we all get caught up, right? And like, well, what difference can I make? It's like voting, right? What my vote's not going to be the one that makes the difference. And I think we can get out of that type of mindset. I don't know enough to say whether this is a good idea or not. The sort of straw movement of the grocery bags, and you'll get the arguments. Well, that only it's X percentage, but I mean you got to start somewhere, right? And whether or not, again, I'm not even asking for validation if these were the right choices, but if you can't look at anything, if you can't point to anything, whether it's you on your bike or you driving a Leaf or some of the things that Andrew's company is doing, even these sort of baby steps, if 5 out of 10 Americans were able to make those changes. I found it fascinating during that span of COVID where like everything was shut down, how the air quality was being measured, and like just drastic changes in a very short amount of time. I mean, that to me it was very telling.
Yeah.
So anyways, listen, I'm sorry we didn't get to go down the lab diamond round more, because that is fascinating. But I certainly wanted to make sure we were able to kind of capture both of your stories, and really appreciate both of your time, and everyone in Denver Startup world. Hopefully we'll be more in person a year from now. But thank you, Jay. Andrew, if you want to just put your information out there, I'm sure it'll be available to people. But Jay, you want to throw an email, a phone number, LinkedIn profile?
LinkedIn's probably the best way to get me. I can drop it here in the chat.
Okay. And Andrew, you want to do the same thing?
Sure.
Awesome.
I should have had that ready to go. Next time
That's all right. That's all right.
Be prepared.
Definitely. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Thanks, Doug. Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.